Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and today is going to be a little bit of a different video. As you guys can tell, I am not in my library. I am in my craft room slash seed starting room slash just miscellaneous. So I have a huge mess behind me and I apologize for that. But this is where I'm filming at the moment just because lots of stuff is going on outside of here and I am doing sprints in here for the Swashbuckling Readathon, which has been so much fun. But I did want to give you guys a wrap up of everything that I read in June. So let's go ahead and get into that. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love to have you do so. Don't forget to click the like button and comment down below and let me know what your favorite book is that you read in June. Okay, so I read, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I read 9 books in June. Not too bad. I actually was having a pretty good reading month and I enjoyed everything. I enjoyed a lot of what I read. I had some 5 stars. I had 1, 2, 3. I had 3 5 stars in June, which is really good. That's like a third of the books that I read in June were 5-star reads. So that's really good. I did read less than I read in May, but that's totally fine. 9 books is a lot, and I'm super happy with that. Also, one of those books was over 1,000 pages or right at 1,000 pages, and I read, I think, 900 pages of that in June. And another one of my books, I read that whole book. It was over 700 pages. So I was reading some chunkier books in June as well. I think one of the other books I read was over 500 pages. So yeah, I read a good amount of pages, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and get into, I'm just gonna go basically in timeline of what I read. So the first book that I finished in June was Carnal Urges by J.T. Geisinger. This is a mafia romance, and this is the second book in the Queens and Monsters series by J.T. Geisinger. The first book is Ruthless Creatures, and this one is an enemies to lovers. You meet our heroine in the first book, and this is a romance between her and the head of the Irish Mafia. Well, he becomes the head at the very beginning, basically. The head of the Irish Mafia is assassinated and he takes over. So he has kidnapped her. He thinks, and everyone else thinks, that she's started this mafia war, even though she really didn't. The idea that she started it is pretty chauvinistic, to be honest. She didn't really start it. This is their own fault. But they think she started this mafia war that they're in. So she is kidnapped by him. And this is a captor-captive romance. And it's enemies to lovers. He's grumpy, she's a sunshine. And they're bickering. It's enemies to lovers, but they're just bickering the whole time. And what's the funniest thing is this heroine. She has the best personality. She is hilarious. The banter is so good. If you like things like Gilmore Girls or West Wing, like that quick banter back and forth, you're gonna like this one. They both brag to each other about their IQs. They're both really, really smart, and they do banter back and forth, and they're always at each other's throats, and it's hilarious. Everyone in his like mafia gang and like in the Irish Mafia starts loving her. She quickly wins over everyone that's under him, and he gets really annoyed by that, and it's really hilarious to watch and read about. And this is also really steamy, really spicy. I just loved it. This was a 5-star book. It was really fun to start out my reading month with a 5-star read, and I don't read a lot of mafia, but when I do, it's fun to have like a winner, and this was definitely a winner. I probably only read maybe like 4 or 5 mafia romances a year, but it is something that I just like to fit into my reading every once in a while because I really enjoy it. It's just a really nice break in between like heavy epic fantasy or fantasy romance. So the next book I read, I was still kind of in this contemporary mood. I ended my May reading month in a contemporary mood and I continued into June with that. So then I read a book that quickly got me out of my contemporary mood, and that was Eyes on Me by Sarah Kate. This is the second book in the Salacious Players Club. The first one is Praise. I gave Praise 4 stars. There's parts of Praise that I really enjoyed, parts of it that I thought weren't very well done, but mostly in general I really enjoyed it. But Eyes on Me, I gave it 3 stars. Looking back, I would say it's closer to a 2-star, so I might drop that down. I'm not sure. It's like a 2.5 star, you know? I put 3 stars, but it's more like 2.5 star. It wasn't good. The writing wasn't good. I thought the hero was gross. I thought the heroine was annoying. I hated both of them. I thought that their romance was not believable, and it also eked me out a lot because there was an age gap, and basically the hero and the heroine are step siblings. So no, they're not related, but the hero as an adult met the heroine when she was a little girl, like little child, and he was almost an adult. So as an adult, he watched her grow up in the same, and was also a family member. So I think the forbidden aspect of this might have been a little bit too forbidden for me personally, for my taste. And I get that different people like different levels of forbidden. It's fiction. That's totally cool. This is just my own thing. I thought it was just a little bit too gross for me personally, but I see why some people like it. But I think overall, from what I've seen, this is probably one of the lowest rated books in this series. I think the general consensus is this couple didn't work very well, and maybe the writing wasn't as good in this book. But yeah, 2.5 stars, not very good. Then I wanted something fun and quick that I could just dive into and have a good time. I ended up reading 3 books in the Ice Planet Barbarians series. So I read books 9, 10, and 11. So the first book was book 9. That was Barbarian's Heart. And so this one is a second chance romance. Our hero and heroine, they've already been mated, so they already have their bond, but the hero is injured in the previous book and he's lost his memory. So this is a memory loss romance, and the heroine and him already have a child together too. So if you don't know anything about the Ice Planet Barbarians, this is an alien romance series. It starts with these women who crash land. They've been abducted by these really bad aliens, and they crash, I don't know if it's crash landed or emergency land on this ice planet, and are kind of like left there. And these aliens that live there on that planet meet them, and then they start developing these bonds with them. So there's big, blue, sexy aliens and these human women. And I really enjoyed this romance. It was so sad to see, though, at times too. But it was an important transition in the series in general, and I won't go into details about that. But I really like this. This was 4 stars. It was a good time. And then I read Barbarian's Hope. This one's about Asha, which you see her a lot throughout the series in previous books. This is the 10th book. This is also a second chance romance. Basically, her and her mate didn't work out, and she is actually Sakui. So she's in the alien tribe. So this is the first one where we have not a human heroine. And she is really grumpy. She's been heartbroken because she lost her first child. And so in that loss, her and her mate kind of split because they can't really handle it. Mostly she can't handle it. She doesn't deal with it well, and then he doesn't deal with her not dealing with it well. Well, does that make sense? They don't deal with it well. Understandably, it's a really, really sad situation. So trigger warnings for loss of a child. I really liked this too. I gave it 4 stars. I wasn't sure that I would. I was actually surprised with how much I really enjoyed these 2 books, 9 and 10, because their synopses didn't sound... I'm not usually like a big second chance romance person. Not that I think book 9 wasn't actually really second chance romance. I think it was more just like amnesia trope, maybe marriage in trouble. So this one was definitely a second chance, and this was just really sweet. I did get annoyed at Asha sometimes. There was other times that just as a mother, like I felt for her. And so yeah, I give that 4 stars. And then I read Barbarian's Choice, and this one I gave 3.5 stars, probably closer to a 3 star. This one follows Farley, and Farley is now she's also Sakui. So this is the second book that follows a Sakui, and this is a romance between her and Marduk. Marduk actually, they land on the ice planet, and they're like the same species, but they don't know of each other because the Sakui have landed here so long ago. He's basically like what the species is in the future, if that makes sense. So this is a relationship between them, and he has to decide whether to continue on with or to stay behind on this ice planet where people live like it's like thousands of years ago kind of thing. Live in such a harsh environment, and he could just continue on living like in modern day and continue on with his job, which is working on this ship, I believe. But he has to decide whether to do that or to stay on the planet because he's met Farley and she's resonated, and he doesn't really know if he has a place either either choice. He just doesn't know if he has a place. He's not a hunter, but at the same time, in his current life, he doesn't feel like he necessarily has a place either. So he's very conflicted. I don't know. I wasn't super taken by the couple, and I didn't really feel it as intensely as some of the other books. I don't know. Overall, I just was like meh about it. So it's 3 stars. Then I read When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Now, I've read the first 3 books in her other series that starts with To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, and I really enjoyed them. Those have all gotten 5 stars. The second book in that series got 6 stars. So the 4th, 5th, and 6th book in that series are not out yet. So this is a new series by her, and this is about dragons, and this was different, but you could definitely still tell it was Sarah A. Parker's writing. It was very flowery and beautiful, very much the same or similar to the other series that I've read by her. At this point, I would have to say she's probably a favorite author of mine. I've never given a book by her below 5 stars. I gave this book 5 stars. At first, the first 100 pages, I was unsure. It started out very slowly, but I kind of was looking at it like, okay, like an epic fantasy. Like, she put a lot into the world building and the character development of these characters. There were some things that she follows similar tropes or ideas to her To Bleed a Crystal Bloom series. She really likes to kind of put you into the middle of a world, or the middle of a story or plot, I should say, without telling you how it started. And then you kind of figure it out through the series. So she really leaves you questioning, and that's something that's very similar in both of her series that I've read. She puts you in the middle of a plot and says, okay, figure it out now. Where did we start? Why are we here? And that's frustrating for some people, and it can be frustrating for me sometimes too, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought the world building was phenomenal. That was one thing that was a little bit different from her first book, or her first series. I feel like her world building was even better in this one. The romance, just like the first one, the romance really isn't what keeps me reading her books. It's there, and I'm curious to see what happens, and I'm intrigued by the couple, but it's not what keeps me there. What keeps me there is always seems to be the main character, the heroine. She develops these amazing characters, and her writing is beautiful, and you just want to know. You're also still questioning, like, how did we get here? What's happening? And so, yeah, I really loved it. 5 stars. I can't wait for the second book to come out, but she better come out with the 4th book in To Bleed a Crystal Bloom series first, because she better. Okay, next I did my reread of The Way of Kings. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archive, which is an epic political fantasy series. The 5th book is coming out in December, and I'm so excited, and I have to reread this series. I've been doing a reread with the Hideaway Discord, and so I finally finished the first book. It was still 5 stars. Was it as good as the first time I read it? Probably not. I think I've read a lot of fantasy since then, and this was one of the first epic fantasies that I've ever read, besides like Lord of the Rings. You know, it blew my mind about what you can do, and it still does. The world building, the character development, the plot, it's amazing. I loved seeing some of the characters again. I had forgotten so much of what had happened. I also got to see a lot of Easter eggs that I didn't notice the first time, obviously, because I didn't know where we were going. A lot of things are kind of hinted at, and you don't really realize the foreshadowing that he puts into everything. So it was really nice to pick those things out. So I gave this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed my reread. I'm going to be picking up the second book, Words of Radiance, in July, hopefully, or at least, like, yeah, starting it in July, maybe finishing it in August, because I do have to get to that one. I'm behind. I'm definitely behind in the read-along, so I'm looking forward to continuing on. 2 more books here. At this point, I was like an epic fantasy kick. I think reading When the Moon Hatched really put me into an epic fantasy mood, and then continuing on with The Way of Kings. So then I ended up actually getting a arc for Nnedi Okorafor's new book. Nnedi Okorafor writes really cool, futuristic, African-inspired science fiction fantasy books. I've read Binti. I need to continue on with Binti. I really want to read She Who Fears Death. I think HBO is actually going to be doing putting out a show for that one, but this one is actually set in the same world as She Who Fears Death, and I think it's actually about the main character's mother. So you can read it as a standalone. I've read She Who Knows without reading She Who Fears Death. And you can definitely do that. She even puts a little bit of a recap, not recap, because it doesn't really spoil what happens in She Who Fears Death, but she gives you the few tidbits of information that you need at the beginning of She Who Knows. But I don't find that they really spoiled She Who Fears Death. I'm still very excited to read that book. I own it and I want to get to that one. So I thought that was very smart the way she did that. She just gave you those little bits of information that you needed, and it was done very well. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. So this is set, like I said, in an African futuristic sci-fi world. So it feels like we're in the future, but the future kind of went backwards some. And this family that we're following, this heroine is the daughter in this family. And she also has 2 older brothers who I think have been moved off and away from the family. And this family goes and they mine salt. And something kind of tells them in their hearts when it's time to do it once a year. And they go to this giant salt mine and they find the best salt that they can there. And then they sell it. And that is how they make their living. And it was really interesting to watch because you get a little piece of history about how this all started, about the woman, I can't remember if it was multiple women, who actually found this salt mine, but then now it's become something where it's only men who are supposed to do it. But our main character, she's a female, like she realizes one day that she feels the calling to go and she wants to go and she decides to go. Her family allows her, but this is going completely against society. Her town is not for it. Her family is not really for it. Her brothers aren't for it. But she also, there's some things that happen along the way that are very, very almost whimsical. Like you're not quite sure what they mean or what's really happening. You really have to use your imagination, and Nnedi Okorafor kind of gives you the tools to imagine what might be happening, but she doesn't lay it all out for you, and I liked that a lot. It's kind of similar to when I read How to Lose the Time War, where it kind of allows you to imagine what this might mean. And she does that some in this one, not as intensely as in that book, but I really liked it. It's a novella. It went by very quick, so it's a really fun little novella to fit in between some longer books, and it was just really good. Nnedi Okorafor is a wonderful writer, so I highly recommend it. I enjoyed it. I didn't give it 5 stars because I would have needed more, I think, for it to be 5 stars, if that makes sense. It didn't like push it all the way for me. Maybe a little bit more in the plot. Sometimes it felt almost slice of life. Maybe a little bit more in some character development too would have pushed it over the edge to me to a 5 star. But it was 4 stars and I really enjoyed it. So I highly recommend that one. It actually comes out, when does that come out? That comes out on August 20th. So it's a little bit of ways away, but I recommend keeping an eye out on that one and checking it out. The next I read was Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. This is a sci-fi fantasy, epic fantasy series, the first book in the series. I'm not sure how many there's going to be, but for now I believe there's at least 5 books out in the series. And this was a really good time too. I don't know how to explain, but I kept on feeling myself wanting to go back to this book, pulled in, wanting to know what's going to happen next. The plot I found to be very intriguing, but he definitely takes his time for character development and world building. He really kind of eases you into it, but in the pacing I think was perfect for me. Just if you're starting an epic series, I thought the pacing was on point. I hated the main character, but I think that this was purposeful. From what I've heard, Christopher Rocchio wanted the main character to be not like super likable, but there were some aspects of his character, specifically the chauvinism. Okay guys, sorry, I had some issues with my memory card, so we're all good, we're back. But anyway, so I had some issues. Obviously I was unsure about the character. Like, I get what he was trying to do, but it also sometimes just wasn't enjoyable to read from his perspective. But at the same time, I'm so intrigued by this world. I already reserved the second book in the series from my library. Like, I want to know what's going to happen next. You're basically told already kind of how the story ends, I believe, or maybe it's going to happen in the middle. I don't know. You're already told that the main character, Hadrian, blows up a sun and annihilates like millions of people, and also basically annihilates the enemy, every single one of them. He's known as like the bad guy, but also like a hero. So he's he's definitely, people have different opinions of him, but he's this famous figure. And then it kind of goes back and it's like, okay, well, this is his story. This is how we got there. So I kind of like stories like that. I guess it's similar to Name of the Wind, where you're getting first person perspective, but from the character being older and telling his past, like telling his story. So I think that's similar to Name of the Wind, but I have not read Name of the Wind. I liked it. It felt almost like Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Stormlight Archive had a baby, but it was like first person past in terms of perspective. So I gave it 4 stars. The only reason I didn't hit 5 stars level was because of the hero. I keep on saying hero, but was because of the main character. I just wasn't sure about him. I'm still not sure how I feel. I think that I could raise the rating to 5 stars or 4.5 stars upon reread or upon further thought, or maybe upon learning a little bit more about the author's intentions. I just didn't feel it necessary that every time he saw a female, he noticed the sway of her hips and her, almost like with the Wheel of Time, he kept noticing them crossing their arms under their breasts and like things like that. I just felt like he fell in love with like 4 or 5 different women throughout the first book even. Like every time he met a woman, he's like, I love her. You know what I'm saying? He was like obsessed with women, we'll say that. And sometimes it almost felt like, especially some of the relationships, like one of the first ones, I didn't feel that it was appropriate. He was 20 and the girl was 16. And, you know, I know you can say this is in a fantasy world, it's set in a different time, all these things, and I totally get that. And also there's a lot of romances that are purposely like forbidden romances that are like that. But there was no warning about that. It wasn't that this was specifically like a forbidden situation and that it was also like trigger warnings for that or anything like that. It was almost written like this was normal and okay. And I just thought that it was the author's choice to do that, and it didn't add anything to the story to have that age difference. It wasn't, nothing was made of it like it was something to get past or get over or to get people to be okay with. It was just a fact of it. And so for that reason, because it didn't add anything, it wasn't necessary for there to be that age difference. I don't know why he added that in. You know what I'm saying? Was this part of what's supposed to make us not like the character? I don't know. Yeah, there's things like that I didn't like, and that if they were to make him unlikable, okay, but I haven't heard him talk about it. I haven't heard other creators talk about it. I've heard them talk about, you know, his personality is what makes him unlikable, or his way of being theatrical or dramatic is what makes him unlikable, or his bad decision making and things like that. Okay, and I see that, but my issue was that why are we having a 20-year-old have a relationship with a 16-year-old if it's not adding to the plot, if it's not even like talked about, it's just the fact of it? Why is that necessary? Why does every woman he see have to sway her hips? Things like that. But it's hard to tell. What is this, the author, just the way the author thinks? Or is this because it's in first person? Or is this just the way the character thinks? When it's in first person, that's hard to know the difference. So sorry for a long tangent on that one. Those are my mixed thoughts on it. I really liked it, but there was just those couple of things that made me feel icky. So anyway, I hope you guys like this video. I am looking forward to continuing on with this swashbuckling readathon. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I hope you guys are having fun with that. We're going to be going for the rest of this week. So until, I think, Friday. And anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life.
Until I look away, but I've known you too long. It hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.